Gear updates, mount, fix, and scope picks on episode 425 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up at the night sky, and this podcast is for everyone who enjoys going out under the stars. So, Shane, my title, did you like my title?
It's catchy. It rhymes. I like it.
Yeah. So I tried using AI to make a title for this podcast.
Hmm.
It was terrible. It
Mm.
was horrible. So I was like, man, I'm just gonna call it this. I came up with this in like 2 seconds, but I spent like 15 minutes fiddling with it. No, the AI titles are no good. But did you get any observing in this week, Shane?
I did not, but I want to mention something about AI. I was messing around with just like ChatGPT, OpenAI stuff, or there's a bunch of other ones out there. It is really good for astronomy,
Hmm.
and what you can do. I was playing around, just like make me a list of objects to observe with like a 60 millimeter refractor in a light polluted area, and it was really good. Like it
Huh.
told me the right objects, and
Oh,
then
that's cool.
yeah, and then because it's iterative, you can qualify it with like spring objects or within a certain constellation or
Hmm.
a certain class of objects, and maybe it only gives you five, and maybe you want 10, so you just say give me five more. It's like I think it has real potential to be a pretty cool tool
Hmm.
for planning an astronomy session, and
Awesome.
I'm going to keep using it because it's just fun, and it gives you a different input to figure out what you want to observe.
Well, the other thing we were chatting about before this session, and people should understand, Shane, I both work in technology more or less. But when we were talking about the transcripts, I was thinking because we just do this podcast for fun, folks. We have day jobs in IT, but I was thinking about, we could very easily take like our transcripts and get them maybe written into something more readable because I don't know, Shane. Like when we first did our transcripts years ago, I'd be like, this is going to be great. And I'll edit them and then we can have an article for each episode. But it was, man, I honestly, I started one. I never even finished it. I spent like 4 hours on it and I got like a third of the way through it in 4 hours. I was like, it's going to take me 12 hours to write an article on this. It's impossible, right? But
Mhm.
I think with Chat GPT, we should just be able to drop it in and have it do it. I don't like it's all of our own work, all of our own words. It just would be taken into a filter basically in order to make it readable. Because right now those transcripts are not readable.
No, no, they're terrible. Not that this is an AI episode, but maybe we'll spend a minute on AI. So like generative AI is my wheelhouse right now at work, and it's pretty much everything I'm in for the most part. And it really comes to prompting and well, and certainly the language model behind it. But there's probably an opportunity there, Chris, for us to play around at least and get the right prompting input to ensure
Hmm.
we get the right output of a summary of the transcription. So yeah, let's do that and see what we
Yeah.
can come up with.
Yeah, because the one thing I was trying to do too is to create images, but the images are not there. Like, unless maybe you have to spend like a lot of money to get a package. But they were kind of neat at first. I think I sent you a couple of the funny ones.
Which
Um,
generator were you
oh, I
using?
can't remember. It was some sort of AI generator, blah, blah, blah.
DALL-E is I think it's still the lead, but
Yeah.
the crazy thing too in this space is it really literally changes almost daily as to what the latest and greatest is. But
Yeah. Yeah, I tried three or four of them, and sometimes it would be good or interesting. But most of the time I was like spending way too much time. I'd rather just like I know lots of people who do astrophotography that I know and could get an image from them in 2 seconds, right? So it's like, nah, it might be easier just to get images from people at still at this point in time. But as far as the language goes, like, yeah, I'm totally up for that. I think, well, we have to start recording our transcripts again, though. I think just that there's another the way that our what is it, the podcast host, we can now input them, and then if people are searching on the web, it will use the transcript somehow to call it up. So,
yeah, I believe so. I think it treats it a little bit like metadata so that if if you search actual astronomy podcast in Takahashi, it would then find all of the episodes where you and I say that word. I believe anyway. So we're going to play around with that too. And if it's successful or if it works the way I think it's going to work, then searching our archive will become more effective.
Yeah. But the challenge with
starting at this episode or whenever we actually start doing this, because I don't think we have the ability to go back and transcript all 420 some episodes.
Yeah. Well, I think there might be a way to do it, but I don't know if we're going to get into it. Like I think we've always found it best to kind of make a change and then move forward.
Mhm.
But I got to go in and throw a few switches in there to kind of get things working a little differently. Anyway, so I'm going to turn that on. But those transcripts are very difficult to read. You can't just read them because just the way they come across, even though it's accurate, a conversation is not a very readable thing.
No, it's brutal.
Sadly enough. So, all right. So we got Mount Fix and Scope picks, and maybe I'll go ahead.
Yeah, were you observing at all, or were you just messing around with the mount trying to get it to work?
I was observing the rain, which, you know what? I'm going to say this. This is going to really be controversial, but I was very happy to get rain.
Oh yeah, we're very dry here, so the rain is welcome.
The smokes. So after we recorded 2 weeks ago, there was a fire just beyond ISET. If it was 2 miles away exactly, and it almost wiped out one of the beach communities, or at least a big portion of it, straight across from me. And I'll tell you, if that had gone even further and grown, it would be nothing for those embers to have landed over here, because we were getting the smoke pretty good, and there definitely was stuff falling from the sky. It was that kind of situation where a few hot embers landing over here, we would have just had fire everywhere, you know?
Wow.
But we're definitely in the safe zone now.
Yeah. And hopefully the forests get it as well, so we don't have just, like raging fires like we had last year. Yeah,
we're already way behind. We're sort of average-ish. And now everything is getting a good soak, and some areas, good or bad. Here we are. We've both taken the week off to do some astronomy, and the place we're going to go may receive 5 inches of rain. Right now it's between 80 and 120 millimeters of rain in their forecast for the next week. Actually, I think it is 125 now.
What app are you using for that?
I'm just looking at the Weather Network.
Okay.
It's given 80 to 115 between tonight and Thursday, and then Friday and Saturday it's giving another like 5 to 10 or something, or it was this morning early when I checked. That's a lot of rain. So, of course, this is the week that we've taken off to do astronomy.
Yeah, well, hopefully it shapens up. Yeah.
But I was saying there's some good news in all this. One is we are so dry that honestly, I don't even care. I'm honestly happy to see the rain. Little less happy last night. It was supposed to be clear last night, and it rained very lightly here. Almost completely overcast. I could see maybe it was Spica on the southwestern horizon-ish. There was a few breaks in the clouds, and Mike was laughing at me because the rain cloud was just right around me. It was clear in places. It was not clear here. It was raining. So I had that. But a couple things. I want to go into my observatory when it's raining, because I think there might be a couple places where the water is getting in. And if I can figure that out, then my builder will run up and put some weather. We have tons of weather stripping, but what we're trying to do is leave the observatory as open as possible to allow for air circulation to the point that water doesn't get in. So it's not bug tight. It's definitely not airtight. The air kind of goes right through it. But we just want to make sure that not too much water is coming in. So there's a couple spots that water might be getting in, I think. So we're going to go and take a peek at those.
Right on.
that's that. But the other bit is, I'm really hoping for some clear skies because I think I figured out my mount,
Okay.
what's going on with it. So this is not simple. So, I'm an IT person. I do a lot of troubleshooting. That's, a huge, not all that I do, but it's like 25% of my job is troubleshooting enterprise level systems. So like I'm pretty sure I've been using it right. So I finally, kind of really dug into the manual, which I'd read before when I got them out. So I kind of generally knew what I was doing. Everybody's saying, "Oh, you're not putting your right time zone in, or you're not putting the right time in, or you're not putting your right longitude and latitude in." I mean, this is all pretty simple stuff. And even for some of my systems at work, I have to do this. This is something I do at work. And I was like, there is something astronomically wrong with this mount. Sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't work. And I'm putting in all the right information. I've had my wife come up and watch me do it to make sure I did it right. I've had Mike here watch me do it right. Um, and it was just boggling my mind. But I talked to somebody on cloudy nights and they kind of enlightened me into something. And that's this business of the MEL value and the MAS value. Are you familiar with these?
No.
So I'm going to take this right from the manual. So this is right from the manual, always RTFM. People can Google that, by the way. And when doing a two-star alignment and you're doing the second star, it's so basically what you do to align a Skywatcher AZ GT, or no, an AZ EQ6 or EQ AZ6 or whatever that's called. Anyway, is you have to, in Alta Zenith mode, you make sure that the mount is zeroed and pointed north. And I even went in the day and checked, and my mount is absolutely pointed to true north, not magnetic north. And it's leveled. When it says it's leveled at 90 degrees for the scope. Counterweight is pointed west. This is how you're supposed to set it up. And when you do the first star, what it does is it tells you pick a star, and you can either slew to the star with the hand paddle, or you can point the star. And I'm oversimplifying this a little bit. Basically, this is what you do. So let's say it says to go to Vega. So, all right, I like to do it manually because that's how I roll. And so I loosen off the clutches, and it says you can do it manually. It says either or, it doesn't matter. So I loosen off the clutches, go to Vega manually, and then it says pick your second star. And these second stars are often pretty wacky. Sometimes they aren't. And when they aren't, I often have a pretty good shot of getting it. But even last week, I was on Vega, which was just above the horizon. I was like, it's a bit low, but whatever. It says this. And then it was giving me like Castor and Pollux. So I went and tried to pick those, but it was stopping at the meridian. And I couldn't figure out why. And that was sort of one of my clues to where things were going wrong. But it's the second star alignment. It says in the manual 2 seconds after you do the second star alignment, and for the second star, the telescope will slew automatically. You don't need to push it at all. Like when you select that second star Castor, it's supposed to slew there. But my telescope was stopping at the meridian. I think I know why now. So, but if it does go to that second star, 2 seconds after it goes to the second star, the display will read something, and it will say the MEL value is offset in elevation, and the MAS value is the offset for azimuth. Press enter to skip these extra messages, blah, 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 blah. But the MEL and the MAS are basically the elevation and the azimuth, or the altitude and the azimuth. And these are the ones that are being set in the mount. This is where I'm different. My mount doesn't do this. I don't get this MEL and MAS, but instead I get a warning about using existing values. And that's happened since I bought the mount. Now, when you talk to people, say, well, it doesn't really matter that much, blah, 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 blah. But I did find someone that told me that, yes, it doesn't usually matter. But if you know your previous owner was in equatorial mode and you're using it in alta zenith mode, having these MEL and MAS values set for equatorial mode while you're not using an equatorial mode is definitely going to cause it to go screwy from time to time unless certain things line up. So that's my problem, is that it's got these old values that are stuck in it from when it was in equatorial mode, and I need to get them wiped out while I'm using it. And so while I'm using it in alta zenith mode, it doesn't end up getting these values jumbled in with what I'm doing with it and cause it to go haywire. So
So
that's the problem.
did you make the correction and test it out?
Can't do it. Need a clear sky. What you have to do to fix
Uh,
it is you have to do a bunch of like more than one. You have to do at least two one star alignments or one bright star alignments. It's one or the other. And
okay.
what that will do is clear out those values apparently. But there's nothing in the manual for this. There's no way you can figure it out. I just talked to somebody or read a forum post, one or the other. I've been talking to 3 or 4 people. I should say 5 or 6 people actually, and that's where it is. So like for example, and people should know this because these mounts are awesome, but people are selling them, and I got them out at an awesome price from a listener, and I really appreciate that because it really does work quite well when I've had it working, and even when not, like honestly, I just flip the power off sometimes and just use it manually, and it's wicked because it has high capacity, it's really stable. And then when it has worked, it's worked perfectly. Like it will nail things right in the center of the field of view. So I know there's nothing wrong with the mount per se. It's just something in the handset. And honestly, you can just go and buy another handset. They're $200, and considering the deal the guy gave me on the mount, that's just really not a whole lot of money considering how much these mounts cost typically. They're into the thousands and thousands of dollars. So anyway, so what I have to do is just go into a couple one-star alignments, clear those values out, and then I should be off to the races. And then we'll input my value for my observatory. Like it's well, and the guy I bought it from did tell me some of this stuff. It didn't make sense to me at the time. And one of the things that the first thing he said to me when I called him is he said, "Don't bother coming and looking at this mountain unless you have an observatory." And that is good advice because it weighs like 30 odd pounds. Once it's in there, it's in there, and it's meant to be an observatory. It just is meant to have these values in it really for one location. I guess if you're traveling with it, which you can kind of sort of do, but it's a pretty big mount to travel with. I guess you would just have to clear them out like if you were setting up at a star party. But that's typically when people are going to run into it. But I know there's a lot of people that just buy this mount, put it in their observatory, or just maybe use it in their yard, semi set up a lot of the time, or more or less in the same spot. And you're just never going to run into this issue. And maybe the new ones don't have it. I don't know. This is like a first generation one, but I definitely have this issue.
Hmm. Well, very interesting. It's very strange.
It is.
Hopefully that solves it for you and it works the way you want it to work.
It is. So, but I just like, because I even talked to Mark Radici, and Mark's like, "I don't think you have the time." I'm like, "I have the time, and right, Mark."
Mhm.
Mark's awesome. Don't get me wrong. Anyway, I'm hoping to do a thing with him maybe later this summer once I get my observatory more or less done, or at least vacuumed out. That's the other thing I need to do this week in the rain. I need to vacuum it. I need to sweep it. This is what I need to do. Clean out all the junk, sweep it, vacuum it, dust it. That's what needs to happen. And then it will sort of be quite operational at that point. So there's two other things though. I went through the manual, and I did read the manual when I got it. It seems fairly straightforward, except that there's nothing in there about this warning message that you get. And I tried looking it up before and I couldn't really figure it out because it's not apparent. And I think, like I said, since most people are using it in the same spot, and probably most of the posts are from people who bought it, or maybe people who buy them used are just smarter than I am, or you're able to figure it out. Yeah, there's just not much out there on this error. But it seems like a few people at least have worked through it. I did talk to somebody who did, and they've kind of given me this advice. And then I did verify that advice. If you sort of search for it specifically, this Mel and Maz thing, you can kind of find it, but this is kind of obscure, I think. But anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So there's a couple other things that I found out. One is that you need to select stars in the horizontal angle that are about 30 to 60 degrees of altitude apart in the sky.
Mhm.
And I'm still trying to figure, this one is the thing that I'm a little bit confused about, but I think essentially you don't want to have stars that are too close together nor too far apart. And I'm thinking maybe what was happening when I was choosing like Vega and Castor or Pollux or whatever it was. I think it was Castor though. They're definitely more than 60 degrees apart in the sky. I'm going to say they're probably like 130 degrees apart in the sky or something. I don't know, but they're much further than 30 to 60. And so if they're 30 to 60, then you can run into some other funkiness with your pointing accuracy, but probably they were too far apart. I'm guessing. I'm
Hmm.
guessing they were just too far apart.
That's also new to me. I always thought the further apart your two stars were, the more accurate your alignment was. I didn't know that there was a maximum. I wonder if that just applies to that mount.
Well, I don't know. This seems like and it gives you this horizontal angle. So, and like I said, this is the thing I'm now most confused about. But I'm pretty sure that I didn't do this part right. And this will be the next thing. If I can't quite get it running after all this, I think this is where I'm going wrong. But at that point, I wondered, there was a couple things I wondered about these mounts. So one is the business of using the GPS. So this mount also came with the GPS unit. And I plan on using that now because it's super easy to use. I already took that up during the day and configured it. I Googled it when I bought the mount and it came with this. And I read all these nightmare stories about how it didn't work and people had all these issues. And I'm like, well, I'm way up here in Saskatchewan, but I guess because we have so many satellites around the top part of the northern hemisphere, it works super awesome. It just found them like within like 2 minutes and set the whole thing up for latitude and longitude. So I'll probably just use that because it's just so simple. But where was I going with this? Yeah, but there's all these other add-ons you can get for this mount. There's a Wi-Fi dongle, and it's only $90. And I think maybe even some of these mounts come with the Wi-Fi either integrated or as a dongle now, or people just buy it because I see this quite a bit. A lot of people use like a Bluetooth connector to connect to their planetarium software, and the Wi-Fi dongle allows you to connect to your phone to do all this stuff over the phone, which uses the GPS on your phone to do that portion of it and some of the time and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of these add-ons. There's also the Celestron StarSense has a whole adapter module for it. And I was like, I was assuming that much of this stuff was for people who are doing astro imaging. But that's not true. A lot of the people who are doing like the electronically assisted astronomy are using these devices with them. And anyway, to make a long story short, there's a whole cottage industry that's set up, I think, in part probably for solving this problem. Because as soon as you put a Wi-Fi dongle on and you attach to your phone, this problem goes away because you're off that handset, and the handset is where the problem lies. You know what, Shane? You were the person who kind of put me onto this because you were talking, maybe it was even in the last episode, about how the handset is like the brains.
Mhm.
And I was thinking it's something in the handset because the telescope mount itself works perfectly fine. It's something in that handset. And for sure, there's like a few funny things. The other thing that I discovered was that when you're done getting that second star in the center of the field of view, so what you do is you can manually go to the first star and then you stop and then you have to center that in your field of view using the hand paddle. And then you select your second star, and the telescope will automatically go to the second star. And then you have to center that in your field of view. But when you're done centering that, you're supposed to have used your up and right paddle at the end of that configuration, at the end of that centering. And if you didn't, it tells you actually put it slightly, out of center and then get it back into center by tapping up and right. And that will take the backlash out of the telescope because I did have some backlash in the scope and I was wondering how to get rid of that. There's some other fancy stuff you can do with it, but it says just do that. And most people say that should do the trick. So turns out there's like a whole pile of little futzy little things with the mount. And I go back to my original statement, which I made even before I bought this mount, which is having electronics in the field is not my favorite thing. Because this is I think some people must like this, Shane. I do not like this portion of astronomy.
No, I don't either. And when you were over for the eclipse and I had that Celestron tracking mount set up, it reminded me why I don't enjoy using them. And hearing your stories is yet, more support for that. But once you get it all aligned, hopefully you can just park it at the end of each session and never really have to do this again.
Yeah.
And it should be good.
Yeah, and there is lots of aftermarket stuff. And once I get my own values stuck in there, I'm not gonna This is not a grab and go mount that you go wandering around with. Yeah, it's just going to stay there. And so those values will be what the values are until, whenever I decide just to get a manual mount again. But my original idea was just to get a big manual mount and put it in the observatory. And but this one you can use manually. I'm gonna actually modify it. There's a couple small things you can do to make it slightly easier to use in manual mode, because that's just what I've been doing. That's sort of in a way like one of the reasons why I bought this mount. I bought this mount for a few reasons, is that it does tracking, and I like to have the tracking for my sketching. It's really hard to sketch when you don't have the tracking. If you don't sketch and you're just doing visual, man, it can be fine on the planets. It's sort of good to have for the planets, but for most other things, it's just more of a hindrance than a help. But for the planets, it's nice to have for the planets under high power, it's nice to have the tracking. And then if you're sketching, the tracking is it's almost like mandatory. It really is hard to do a lot of sketching over a long period of time without the tracking. And that's why so many people build like tracking Ponset tables for their daubs and whatever. But that's just me. That's just like how I do it. Other people may vary. I've been chatting to Bill about some of this stuff, our friend Bill Weir, but I know his opinions vary a little bit from mine. But that's all good. Everybody's sort of different in how they do this. But anyway, I also think Bill's using like a 20-inch telescope, and for me, if I'm using like a 4-inch telescope, I think it is a little bit tougher to see this stuff, and it definitely is easier to see it when the scope is tracking along and you're sitting comfortably. But when I walk up to a 20-inch, I can just see stuff immediately. So that makes it easier. But anyway, I've digressed too far, but that's sort of my trials and tribulations with my mount. I think all in all in this, I figured out a variety of ways that I can get to a solution, hopefully without having to buy an adapter or whatever, but literally for $90, which I'm assuming is what a lot of people just end up doing, is buying that Wi-Fi adapter and then just using their phone or iPad or whatever. But we'll see what happens. Now, on to more interesting things. You are looking at some equipment.
Yeah, maybe.
No, let's be honest. You're always looking at equipment, Shane.
I know you think that, but that's not at all true, actually. So what I've been starting to think about, well, and this has sort of been on my list here for quite a while, but just larger aperture, like what is kind of that end game refractor for me? It will be a refractor, something that is sort of the about as large as can be, but still portable. And the default selection or choice, I guess, has been one of the TS Optic 6-inch Apos. They're bino friendly, good size aperture, and still portable. So that's still on the list, but I haven't pulled the trigger for a number of reasons. And I'm starting to think of, well, and again, this isn't a new thought, but maybe building a binoscope. I have the Borg 90FL, and there's Bino Techno, I think, is a company, and they sell a kit that turns Borg telescopes into binoscopes. And their design apparently reduces some of the collimation issues that you have with binoscopes, just how it's constructed. There's certain things that once you kind of lock the setting, it's perfect for you for the rest of your days. And you can do the 90FL or the 107FL. Or one of the advantages of the binoscope is like you sort of get an aperture bump, if you will. So a lot of the bino telescope makers will tell you that it's about 1.5 times or greater in terms of like the perceived aperture bump that you get using two eyes with two separate telescopes. So like a 107 would essentially perform like a 150. But you have the comfort and the ease of using two eyes, I think you can use 2-inch eyepieces even in that configuration.
Hmm.
So, that's appealing to me. If I circle back to the 6-inch refractor, I would use my Bino viewer almost exclusively on there. But with the Bino viewer, you do lose a little bit of light, and there's a few other issues there too. But pros and cons for Bino viewer versus Bino scope for sure. And then kind of the last wild card in that list is the Takahashi FOA 60Q. That's another one that's been on my list for ages just because it's essentially one of the most perfect optical telescopes ever produced. And it's always been sort of in the background. It doesn't really have a great fit in my stable right now. Because I don't really need another 60 millimeter telescope.
Hmm.
It's more just because of how perfect it is. And, I think it would be just an incredible telescope, for backyard use and kind of that ultimate grab and go. But I have the 76, DCU from Takahashi. I've got some Borgs, the 71 FL, the 90 FL now. So lots of options. And, maybe yet another option is I don't purchase anything. I'm quite happy with my TSA 102. But just again, starting to think about potential end game type of refractors. So
Hmm.
maybe I'll pause there and just see if you have thoughts or insights.
Well, I'm just looking here because I'm having trouble finding that TS Optics 150 mil one now. I wonder if they took it out. They've got a pile of their faster ones up now, which seems odd to me because I always thought those ones kind of had attracted me at one point in time, but I went a slightly different way. So yeah, I'm not sure, but I know there's a variety. I know APM makes an ED Apo that's 152 f7.9. Altair makes one, Skywatcher makes one, a variety of manufacturers make one. They're not inexpensive, but
Well,
yeah, I like the idea of big refractor. But yeah, go ahead.
the other issue with those ones you mentioned is none of them are Bino friendly. The TS Optic had a portion of the OTA that could be removed. I want to say it was 12 centimeters or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
So it reduces that optical light path so that you can, attach your Bino viewer natively and you don't have to use a Barlow or OCS.
Yeah, I'm just looking on APM now just to see because it looks like Telescope Service has done a recent update. Their webpage seems kind of janky, so maybe it's just a matter of them doing whatever this upgrade is here. But yeah, I'm just calling up their scopes on another site just to see what they have it here. We'll go price high to low. But yeah, okay. They have one here, 155 mil. That's the expensive one. And then scrolling down. No, they don't. Oh, yeah. Here they go. Ooh, and it's on sale, Shane. It's pretty cheap. 2,800 euros. Yeah. They've got yeah, that's the one. So maybe it's out of production. They're just selling them off, but I'm pretty sure that's the one with the lanthanum and glass. Yeah. Yeah, so it's on sale for like 100 euros or something like that with the 3.7 focuser, which is the one that I would get. But yeah, that would be a dream Bino viewer scope because you like the Bino viewing. Like you like
Yeah,
don't you almost just use Bino viewing exclusively almost?
yeah, pretty much. It would be fairly difficult for me to go back to mono viewing. I still do it on occasion, but the comfort of bino viewing is just so nice. And
Hmm.
while there's a slight loss of light, I think you make up for it in many other areas, comfort, contrast. I think that there's, well, for me anyway, there's a lot of positives that will keep me bino viewing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of going through your list here. 6-inch Bino friendly Apo. I really feel like this is the strongest contender here because you have the Bino viewers already, right? You have like the really good Bino viewer, right?
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
I'm right.
Yep.
Yeah, and you already have the sets of eyepieces. And then for the binoscope, if you're gonna go with that, I would really go with the Nani. Like these binoscopes, like I've used a few and they're just so massive anyway. that like 107 FL is massive. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah, it'd be quite large.
oh, it's like big. I think even the 90 FL is getting up there. And the 90 FL basically is the lightest, most portable 90 millimeter telescope you can get. And then you're going to pair it with another one. But my problem with this becomes like, and I've sort of been down the rabbit hole on this one myself, and I've always thought that eventually I will get a binoscope of some sort. But there's a few things with them. One is that you're now looking 90 degrees, and the big benefit of binoculars, in my opinion anyway, is that you're looking straight through, and you lose that with these binoscopes. So I'm always like, and I've used them. It's not like this is theoretical. I've used like the best ones, like what's that one with like the crazy fluorite and blah blah blah. It's 82 mils. Kawa. I've used like the most like prestigious one, the Kawa 82 fluorite, top of the line. A friend of mine had it, and I've used the APM ones. I've used three or four different ones at star parties, and I just couldn't get it. Like even though you do get a pretty wide field of view, there is something a bit funky about using them. They're kind of hard to maneuver. And then, yeah, and maybe it's just getting used to it though. Maybe if I owned it, it would be different. It's always been one of those things, like sort of if I won the lottery tomorrow, which would be amazing because I don't buy lottery tickets because I don't have that kind of money. Um, yeah, that might be something I would get, but I don't know. 107 millimeter binoscope, that's going to be more trouble than it's worth. The 90 millimeter I could see. I could just barely see that one. But even that one, it's going to be like 10K or 10 kilograms. I don't know how much it's going to cost you,
Yeah, but a 6-inch scope will be twice that probably, right?
but it's going to be easy to mount. And you already have the mount for it.
Yeah.
You can put it on
Well,
that. You could put it on your, was it CGM 9 or whatever it is?
oh, the Lost Mandy,
Yeah,
the
it would ride.
GM9.
It would,
It would, but I don't love the equatorial mount. The 6-inch probably would result in me buying a new Altaz mount as well, because I don't think the Stellar View M2C would handle it. Maybe it would, but it would be on the threshold. But the Stellar View would take the binoscope, assuming it, I would end up going Borg because of how light it is.
mm,
So there's that factor too. Um, and one of the positives with the 90 FL is I have one. So,
yeah,
so I'm kind of, somewhat invested there already, and it wouldn't
yeah.
result in me having to buy, two brand new scopes for binoscoping.
Like, and that logic alone, and the fact that the Nani is that much lighter, and I don't know how much more you'd get between. Like, I kind of like with a scope, I feel like with binoculars, the difference is way more subtle when you do the jump. Um, so like when you jump from a 90 to 107 telescope, that's going to be pretty subtle in my opinion. I feel like in binos, it's almost going to be undetectable. Like if you go from an 80 millimeter bino to a 90 millimeter bino, it doesn't beat you over the head with it.
No,
It's
but it,
just,
it it is noticeable. Like we even
yeah.
commented a couple episodes ago when you were mentioning the difference between your 100 and your 125.
Mm,
I know it's what 8 millimeters more or whatever than the difference between the 90 and
yeah.
the 107, but certainly there's a difference there.
Yeah.
And every millimeter counts with refractors up until about that 5-inch range.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I'm also curious too if listeners have any insights or thoughts on these options or maybe other options. I'm open to pretty much anything. Again, my requirements likely are going to be sticking with a refractor of some kind. Um, if a new mount is needed, I'm not opposed to that.
Mm,
Again, this is sort of starting to think about end game stuff. So, I don't expect it to necessarily be inexpensive, and that's
mm.
okay as long as it's something that I'll probably end up using for the rest of my days.
Yeah. I think though the binoscope isn't the best option because that's really going to excel at a dark sky. And if you're tending to be doing more backyard astronomy, which is fine, I think that like that 6-inch binoscope or like with a bino viewer on it, like out of these three choices, that's like such an end game scope that you're just going to use a lot, just because you're going to want to set it up, get a really good cover, throw that over, like if you're, having a bunch of really good days and nights and, get a pretty good padlock for your fence or something. And then, you can have that set up or you have the mount set up and, I think you have like a spot where you can store it near your back door and then you can just walk that scope out and drop it on. Like that would be like such the double star machine, right? Like for what you're observing, that would be, in my opinion, the scope. But I'm just saying.
Yeah, certainly. It's not an obvious choice to me. I have to give it a lot more thought because there's just so many pros and cons to each one of these options. And one of the cons with the binoscope is you do have to mess around a little bit to make sure that you're collimated and able to merge both images. And sometimes that's not easy with a binoscope, or it's certainly easier with a bino viewer because there's just
Yeah.
less moving parts there, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
But again, you get full light throughput with the binoscope.
Yeah.
I don't know. And
But what
a
do you,
6-inch is no small instrument either.
yeah, but I would just come back to what targets are you observing? Because if you were observing mostly at like dark sky sites and you're mostly observing wide field targets, I mean, really, I should be trying to convince you to buy the binoscope because that would suit my observing style pretty closely. Except for the fact that I've tried them and it hasn't won me over.
Yeah.
But what would you be observing with it? Like if you're still like really into observing like the moon and double stars and like white light solar through a 6-inch Apochromat with white light and a bino viewer on it would be, I mean, that would be pretty amazing too on days of good seeing. It just seems like the 6-inch binoscope would really suit your targets.
It would primarily be used at a dark site. I don't envision pulling the 6-inch out a lot for the backyard. It goes back to our last episode too, a little bit about urban observing. Smaller aperture usually is better in light polluted centers, so you're not drawing in all of that unwanted light as well. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
that
Definitely need some thought.
6 inch is still like a small, like, I mean, it's not a small aperture or a small telescope, but 6 inches and under is still, I think it's still a fair size for like the urban environment. Yeah, I just think with like the double star observing star colors and planets and the moon. I mean, the moon in a 6-inch, you get a lot of resolution there. There's essentially, I feel like there's nothing on the moon that you couldn't see with a 6-inch. Every other telescope that's even larger is going to, it's just not going to cool enough, or the telescope itself is going to be an impediment to the resolution. But the 6-inch, yeah, that's really going to shine. And it's such a nice jump over the 4-inch TSA. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's the other part of it too, is that jump up from the TSA, because I don't think the TSA will leave my collection. It's always nice to have a good 4-inch. So that one probably stays. But others would probably leave if and when a 150 were to come. But I'm also curious to see what a 7-inch refractor shows for views, and that might help me decide whether or not a 6-inch is in my future.
Yeah. Too bad we don't know somebody with one of those. Yeah, could be a matter of months here before we get to that part. Like I said, I just got to get the mount working first.
Yeah. So, and this is not anything I'm looking to do tomorrow. This is just starting to think about it.
Unless that 6-inch is out of production and they're selling units off.
Well, if it is, then there will be other telescopes. I'm not too worried about that.
There's always a hacksaw. There's always a hacksaw for shortening the tube.
Yeah, that is an option for sure. But then you're sort of stuck with that, and then if you don't want a binoscope or binoview, you have to start attaching a whole bunch of extenders off the back, which isn't always great. But I did find it on Telescope Services site.
You did? Did you see the new? Am I just getting like a weird redesign site or something?
It is a redesign. Yeah, it's a little less intuitive, but
that's weird because it was easy to kind of find stuff, but that new one it's not amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my my little I guess not little, but a decision that's in my brain right now, and was curious about your perspective, Chris. And like I said, is if any listeners have opinions, I'm all ears.
Yeah, you could sell the 76, the FOAQ, like that option. Because I've talked to one person who owns it. Now I've read like a lot person I know who owns that scope. Uh, like the best of the best six, but there's something with that. But I feel like owning that plus, oh, I'm breaking up bad. Oh, I don't know why. Am I still breaking up?
Now you're okay, but the last 30 seconds or so was just like oh, like it was in and out. It was not good.
Hmm. Well, that's all right. It was nothing. That's where I revealed how to observe. It's all good. I was just saying that you could sell the TAC 76 and then get the FOAQ because those who have the FOAQ say it is sort of the best of the 60 millimeter breed, but it's in the same size category as the 76. So I don't know. If I were you, I think the 6-inch bino friendly Apo, because you could use it in the city if you so choose. I certainly would. And then it suits the targets that you're going after. Like all those O'Meara objects would be well represented in the bino viewer on that 60 or the 6-inch too. Whereas the Borg, like a 90 millimeter or 107 millimeter, like you can buy. Like, do you even have? I'll loan you I have 100 millimeter binoculars. I'll loan them to you if you want.
Okay.
You can fill your boots. They're somewhere, but yeah, I mean, it's a lot. You've looked through those, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't recall,
Yeah,
but perhaps, I'm sure I have at one point.
yeah, yeah. I can dig them out sometime, and you can fill your boots if you want. I don't have the mount for them though, so you
Mm.
have to figure out the mount. But yeah, like it's cool in that, but like it just goes to show like I hardly even know where they are, right? Like I'll have
Mhm.
to go and find them in all my
Mhm.
gear. I should bring them out here and figure out a mounting for them. But yeah, you can borrow them, but it's not like I don't know. It's a novelty. It's really cool. Like it's really cool to go to a star party when somebody has one of these and they're set up on a target. It's awesome. But as far as living with it, I don't know.
Yeah.
Not really my deal.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think. Yeah. I like the handheld image stabilized binoculars. That's the deal. And then as well,
Yeah,
like
those are good.
bigger refractors, I think, and big telescopes like Mike is getting. That's going to be pretty cool. But anyhow, should maybe conclude this one before I completely lose my connection or something.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Please subscribe, share the show with other stargazers you know, send us your show ideas, observations, and questions to actualastronomy@gmail.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.